All right, thank you very much for tuning in. So, can a doctor adequately treat patients if they were brought into this Darwinism camp, right? So, the question is, let's say, for example, because we are obviously intelligently designed. If you don't believe that, I mean, you can click off this video right now because, I mean, you're a fool. You're an absolute. If you believe that we were brought in over millions of years in a space rock, yeah, and your grandfather's a monkey, right? Just leave me alone, right? We're not. We're not in the same. We're not even in the same ball fields, right? And not even in the same, you know, not even in the same universe, man. Right? So no, this whole heliocentric thing, the Earth is a round spinning ball, and all this stuff, that's nonsense, right? And then the whole Charles Darwinism and all this stuff. And Charles Darwin, okay, your grandfather was a monkey, but then the cow morphed somehow into a whale, and then he went into the sea, and then the frog, he got some legs. Well, I know it's an amphibian and all this stuff, but it's just wacky. I mean, did you ever actually research the Charles Darwinism doctrines? Right? It's a religion. It's an absolute religion. So, can a doctor adequately treat patients if the origin of the human body is not based into what it actually is, like intelligently designed? Like, if you're gonna don't get me started on psychiatry. Right? So that's a flawed medical science. There's absolutely no basis on which to, they suggest that there's a chemical imbalance and things like that. Right? There's so many people speaking out about psychiatry, but I don't see the actual legitimate scientific criticism. I mean, it seems like that's been snuffed out of existence. Right? Like the legitimate scientific. Uh, criticism, because I mean they really do believe that that's the whole point, right? Is that the man came from a monkey, right? Not intelligently designed. There's clearly evidence of intelligent design here. I mean, if you want to. If you want to look at the anatomy and so certainly embryology, but neuroanatomy, right, neurological, so just study medical science, right, just for yourself, right, and I get these people. Why would I want to study medical science? Because it's fun, right? Why am I learning German? Why am I learning, whatever kind of thing? Because it's fun. I'm learning Spanish for fun. I'm learning, a little bit of Chinese for fun. I'm learning this stuff because it's fun to learn, right? If you want to sit there on the TV all day long, or if you're drinking and everything, yeah, oh man, learning. Oh, learning is terrible. Yeah, because you're drunk, right? It's a poison. That's why they keep them really dumbed down the population, right? They make sure there's lots of beer available. Oh man, my family's been totally ravaged by drinking and by crack. They're smoking crack and everything like that. Yeah, yeah. Well, my mom's side of the family is really really terrible. Smoking crack all the time. Oh man. And then we had to leave because it's so traumatic to see our own family members destroying themselves on these substances that are, where are these substances available so freely available? Like, it's so easy to get crack over there. They're smoking crack, yeah, and drinking, right? Drinking, of course, yeah, and cigarettes, right? They're all smoking, right? What's the point? I got a dog, intelligently designed dog over there. Choo, choo. Get out of here, intelligently designed dog. You're not a matter of, you're not a product of evolution. Yeah. I'm not really mean to dogs, but I'm gonna disrupt the peace here. I got my other dog here. This is my shadow boy. This is my shadow boy. Hey, shadow. Yeah. It's guarding the house, so I know they're gonna fight. Anyway. All right. Let's continue. So, can a doctor actually be adequately treating patients if he's trained in the evolution doctrine? So the evolution doctrine is the basis, the number one day of you know, not even medical school, just like high school. They will push that into the brain of these people, and it's clearly wrong. And clearly, government, they know that it's not true. And the government knows it's not true. Right? This is a luciferian doctrine, right? What kind of reasonable person is going to put that in the curriculum, right? There's no reasonable person that can say, these are damnable heresies, right? This is a Luciferian doctrine, right? It actually is. If you analyze the doctrine, okay, the cow went into the water, then he morphed into a whale, but it happened over many years. It's just nonsense. But then the problem is they believe it, right? They wholeheartedly believe that, your grandfather was a monkey, right? That your great 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 ancestor was a monkey, right? And they believe the Earth is millions of years old and things like that, when it's clearly not. Right? Where's the evidence of that, right? Where's the actual evidence of that? And they will never go to the logical end of these points. They would never. They would just not, right? What do I mean by that? So, recently I had a friend, and he was deceived by these atheistic fools, right? They're not atheists. There's no such a thing as atheists. There's Luciferian fools. And what happened was that, they were rapid firing these questions to him, right? And they were like, if there's if God really exists, why is there sick children in the hospital? Rapid fire questions, right? And instead of taking the time to actually address each of these, basically because man has free will and there's sickness on the earth because of whatever. He would rapid fire these questions, and he was like, oh yeah. Well, then the atheistic fool, this Luciferian priest, would give the answer to the questions, the question and answer thing, right? So anyway, he fell for it. He totally fell for it, and now he's blaspheming left and right and center. I had him for a friend for a long time, and I put him on mute, but he's still my friend on Facebook. But man, he's blaspheming left, right, and center because of this is so. They say atheist, but it's not an atheistic worldview. It's not a secular worldview. There's no such a thing as a secular worldview. It's clearly, and what does it lead to? Right? It leads to we were came out from the evolution doctrine, right? And then we are our own gods, right? What did the serpent say to Eve? The very first book of the Bible, the Genesis chapter 3. It says, ye shall be as gods. Ye shall be as gods, right? If you remember that. So basically what happens is that the and it's very, very easy. I mean, nobody's going to argue with me that the Darwinism is Luciferianism, the same as the serpent beguiled Eve into eating from the apple. Where does it say an apple? It says a fruit. Where does it say, just one useless thing that these atheistic fools will say, well, that means that, so there was only Eve that was created, so they had sex with their mothers, right? Where does it say that in the Bible? It never says anything like that. That is an assumption that you've created. So God made Adam and God made Eve, right? And then they had sons. So then, and then a particular, it's not even worth my time to, say this, but, they're saying, well, there wasn't another woman. Where does it say that there wasn't another woman in the Bible? So they must have had sex with Eve. So then, the mother had sex with her son to create the world. It's the Bible is not true because of my own assumption, right? So they made their own assumption, and they're laughing at their own assumption. So they made their foolish assumptions, which they are fools, right? An assumption that's nowhere in the Bible, and they're laughing at their own ideas. They're laughing at themselves, but they're incorrectly discrediting the Bible, which is perfect and of a supernatural origin, but they're making their own assumption that's not in the Bible, and they're using that to discredit the Bible. Yeah, I'm sure you probably went through that, before. I mean, this is very easy to logically conclude, but you know what I mean, though, right? They're making their own illogical conclusions, foolish conclusions, right? So just to rebut that very, very quickly, there's nowhere in the Bible that says that, right? You're full of foolish nonsense thought, a perverted, twisted thought, right? So, God created Adam, right, from the dust of the ground, right? And he created Eve, right, as a mate, right? So where does it say anything about what this atheistic fool? Anyway, all right, so these fools, like, if you actually analyze, and it would take time, I mean, there's some time there. If you actually go to, like, these atheistic, whoever, Richard Dawkins and that Dillahunty guy or whatever, if you actually analyze, you can rebut every single one of these arguments, right? They are easily, and these Muslim clerics and everything, every kind of theological, like, analyze the theological doctrines, analyze them, they can be rebutted, right? Same as very, very clearly Mormonism, Catholicism, things like that, yeah, like Jehovah's Witness, very, very easy to rebut, right? To dispel these arguments. And once you have the truth of the New Testament, right, or the Old Testament, or but the New Testament, right, you have the truth, right, the inalienable promise of eternal life, right? You would never be fooled by these goons, right? So who are the goons? The medical establishment, right? These guys. So let's go back to our topic of the day: is can a medical doctor actually adequately treat patients in they've been fooled. They've been fooled, right? They have been fooled as the basis for their life, right? This is the basis for their own lives. Right? They are Darwinists, heliocentricists, right? I know it's very easy to get involved in that because they've been brainwashing heliocentricism. They've been putting that into the kids' brains. That's why my kids don't go to public school, right? So all they talk about is there's planets and dinosaurs. I don't care about planets and dinosaurs. I care about science, literature, math, things like that. Theology. I'm getting them a little bit. I'm not getting into the hard doctrines, but a little bit of theology and math, science. You know what I said? That's what they're going to learn. They're not going to learn heliocentrism, and the point about heliocentrism is not even remotely possible, right? It's not, right? So if you're a heliocentricist, you're a victim of this cult, right? It's a luciferian doctrine. Like imagine this idea, right? So we're living into an infinite space, and there's no God, and we're living in a tiny planet. We're insignificant. Monkeys were our grandfathers, and it doesn't really matter if you kill a human because survival of the fittest and all this stuff. Because we're not really special. We're just kind of like a burden, right? That's a luciferian doctrine. That's absolutely not true. So here's the truth, right? Intelligently designed humans, right? Smarter than any kind of dogs and animals and whatever, but very, very special, right? Very, very created in the image of our Creator, right? The Lord Jesus Christ came in as a man, right, to save us from these things, right? So from the evil, right? Right. What happens is there's sins and dark doctrines like heliocentrism, Darwinism, atheistic fools coming around and deceiving people. And what is even worse is that the government is actually pushing this Luciferian doctrine to minimize the population, right? To not minimize, to literally eradicate the population, right? That's why we need a good king, right? I've always said that, right? Instead of a it seems right now that our current king, which is, technically, I'm a Canadian citizen, so technically my king would be the Charles, but what happened with this guy? He is an adulterer, he cheated on his wife and all this stuff, and there's infidelity here, so he's a bad king, right? You don't play around with infidelity and adultery and things like that and expect to be a good king, right? He's over there loud and proud about his wife, right? So imagine for a minute, let's say for example, and I realize they're probably just puppets and inverted genders and things like that. But let's say for example somebody were really a king, a good king, right? A good king, and that was like on the top of the world, right? That would rule fairly, right? Well, I don't see that coming except in the new age where Jesus is going to be the king, right? The king, and he's going to rule fairly, right? That's actually coming. That's actually coming. And that's going to be a great day, a great and wondrous, day that we're going to have an actual good king, right? The king of the kings, right? That'll be the greatest thing ever, right? So the point is, these doctors can't adequately treat patients. They can't make the correct decisions because the basis of who they are treating is just the grandson of a monkey instead of an intelligently designed human, right? It's the word human. The word human. Okay, well, the word human. What is the word human? It does it imply? Well, maybe it implies heliocentrism and all this stuff. Maybe it implies that. Maybe, but what do I mean by the man or a woman, right? Intelligently designed, valuable, right? Instead of a burden, right? The grandson or the granddaughter of a monkey. There's a great difference there. One is godly doctrine, and the other one is a luciferian doctrine, right? Thank you very much for tuning in. I'll see you in the next video.